Welcome to the Exposure Ninja Digital Marketing Podcast. My name's Tim. I'm Head Ninja at Exposure Ninja, which is a digital agency in the UK. Now, in this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Jonathan Hedger from Kolabtree. Kolabtree is a platform for you to essentially outsource the expertise for your business. So you can bring in scientists and experts in a particular field to whether it's write content for your site or collaborate on product development or pretty much do anything. Now, from a digital marketing perspective, it's extremely interesting because post Google Medic, every business needs to have really high authority content on their site. And if you're in the medical or scientific or health space, then obviously that person needs to be qualified. But even if you're not, there are potential uses for these sorts of experts. We talked through one example actually that was carried out by spareroom.co.uk as a bit of an SEO or digital PR exercise, where they had one of the experts on Kolabtree work with Spareroom to calculate how Ross would get the sofa up the stairs in that epic scene from Friends. And this piece went and got loads of coverage all over the place. National newspapers, places like House Beautiful, Washington Post, I think, covered it. The Mirror as well. Loads and loads of different high quality authority links. And it's because it was a combination of something that's quite familiar to us, i.e. Friends, with a scientific take on it. So there's loads of opportunities here. So as Jonathan's talking, what I want you to do is get your brain in gear thinking about what could the possible uses for these sorts of experts be in our business, and how could we use this type of expertise to get attention for what we do. So really interesting chat. Jonathan's a very bright guy and of course has fantastic discerning taste and an eye for quality, as they are a client of Exposure Ninja. So enjoy this episode with Jonathan Hedger from Kolabtree. And before I forget, just in case you thought you were going to get through the intro with no ad, there is a very small one. If you're used to listening to the show on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, don't forget you can also watch the video versions of all of our podcasts over on the Exposure Ninja YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com/Exposure Ninja, you will see them all there. Enjoy the show. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tim. Pleasure to be here.
So you are from Kolabtree, aren't you? And in this episode, we're going to be talking about a kind of new way of working with experts in a particular field, and the SEO and conversion implications that has. It also piggybacks on a bit of a trend that we at EN are extremely fond of, which is remote work. So being from Kolabtree, maybe you could give us a bit of an intro as to what Kolabtree is and how it works.
Sure. So Kolabtree, we were founded in 2015, so we're a relatively new company. We're the world's largest freelancing platform for scientists. So we have 10,000 registered PhDs now, which we just passed last week. So that was a big, exciting milestone for us. And essentially, we help businesses or entrepreneurs or any organizations that need help from a specialist, whether it's a scientist like a food scientist or someone to help with product development or food formulation. They essentially come to Kolabtree, they post their projects, and they can liaise with experts and ultimately hire them.
So what might some typical use cases be?
We actually see a very diverse range of customers coming to us for help. One of the largest areas is in the healthcare and in the medical space. So a lot of the time it's scientists or scientific researchers or medical researchers who need some help, either with some medical writing, or in some cases they need some like a biostatistician to help them with some statistical analysis. We have entrepreneurs who come on board who need a food scientist. It might be to develop a new cereal bar. We get a lot of cannabis-related projects or CBD-related projects with the law changes, especially in the US. So all manner of different types of projects.
Now, obviously, in the last, say, year, it has really been a year since Google's Medic update. Businesses have been more keen than ever to make sure the content on their site is well written but factually or scientifically accurate. I know that around the time Medic happened, we did a lot of studies of sites that had seen big increases or big decreases, as Medic was kind of being touted as this new world order. And it turned out that a lot of the sites that had seen big increases had not only well-written content, but content that was attributed to someone who was qualified to talk about that thing. So I'd be interested to get your perspective as a business that essentially provides that type of content to companies that might not otherwise have it. Do you think that this post-Medic stuff is something that will pass? Is it just a fad, or are we entering a new era in the internet where people start looking, when you ask Google, why does it hurt when I pee, and you see the search result, you don't just read the answers, you first check who's written this, are they an expert in this space? Is this something that businesses are going to have to get used to for the rest of time?
Definitely. I think we need to remember that the internet is still in its relative infancy, and it's kind of been a bit like the Wild West, and you can write pretty much any content you like, and it will get indexed and it will get read by people. And this is something that Google has recognized, and obviously they recognize the importance of delivering quality and relevance to their users because they want people to continue to use Google. And what's happened in recent times, a good example actually is the fake news, where content has gone online and people have read it and believed that it's real. And so companies like Google, they recognize that they have a responsibility to make sure that the content that they're putting online is accurate and truthful. And of course, the challenge is how you define accuracy and truthfulness. And traditionally, our customers have been sort of biotech and pharmaceutical companies or medical and healthcare companies that are looking to produce content for their customers, who are very often doctors. But with what's happened on Google recently, we're finding more and more people are coming to us because they have content which can be about any number of things, like will orange juice cure a cold, or all sorts of different things. And there's a lot of content written about this, but the question is it based on real data? Is it written or edited by experts? And a lot of the time the answer to that is no. So we do find a lot of companies coming to us because they want someone who's actually qualified to respond to that question with an accurate and reliable answer, so that they can attribute that article to that individual, and that is something that Google recognizes. So if it sees that the article is not necessarily even written by an expert, but at least fact-checked by one, then that adds a lot of credibility to that website, which we believe ultimately has an SEO benefit.
It's a really interesting example that the orange juice doesn't cure a cold, because I guess that illustrates perfectly the problem with the current internet, which is that someone writes an article a while back that says orange juice contains vitamin C, that helps, whatever, so that helps you with colds, and then that article then gets cited, and you end up in this kind of echo chamber of potentially fake news, or news that no one can really verify, because the standard internet answer is yes, orange juice helps with a cold, whereas actually whether or not that's true is something that a qualified person would need to answer, really. So I can understand how that means that in order to kind of verify what is actually true, Google's never going to know what truth is it really? It just has to look at who is best suited to give this answer, and is that person responsible for the answer, or is it Abigail Smith, who's written, last week she was writing about 5 exercises to lose tummy fat, and she's got no specialism at all.
That's right. So we believe that Google is looking for signals that will help it make some kind of a decision as to what is the best website to rank, and it's not necessarily the one with the most inbound links, for example. As we know, there's a whole variety of factors. But with the sites that qualify as your money or your life, obviously your life is healthcare, and with those, Google has said that it's looking specifically to be able to identify the kind of credibility and authority of that individual. Do they have the qualifications to answer that question? If they do, then on a like-for-like basis, it's more likely that that website will be ranked better in the eyes of Google than one that doesn't have content that's written by a credible source.
And I guess the pressure for Google to get this right only intensifies as Google gets better. I know that, just having like a little Google Home in your house and being able to ask it any question, you kind of get used to answers which sound about right. One of the examples we use in our seminars is the question, what's the optimal temperature for a baby's room at night? The answer to that question, it's quite important that comes from someone who is qualified and not, some randomer who says, 10 degrees, and then before you know it, because we've all been conditioned to just trust Google as right all the time, you start getting fake news when it really matters. I'm interested to know whether you think that at the moment Google's particularly focusing on your money or your life. Is this something that's going to expand out from just being I am my well stuff? Will every business need to worry about who has written the content or who is attributed to writing the content on their site?
Yeah. And so going back to your original example, I think the of the temperature of the room for the baby. So the thing about academics is they have a very rigorous process in terms of trying to identify what the answer is, and it may be that they don't. If you ask an expert, they don't actually know the answer, but what they will do is they'll go and do a literature review, and they'll conduct meta-analyses, and they'll look at all of the research that's ever been done on that, and then based on compiling all of that information together, normally it's possible to come up with a reasonable answer to that question based on a number of various studies and facts, and that is the right thing to present to an audience. So as you say, there are a variety of different views, and ideally based on actual data. Someone will go out, and normally this is someone with a PhD or a postgraduate degree of some sort. They'll be able to go out and find the best answer for that, and if you're able to produce content that's that rigorous, that is backed up, then that's definitely helpful. In terms of other areas, I think this all kind of comes back to what Google is and what Google is trying to do, and it's essentially the same with other search engines. They want to make sure that they are the best place to find the right answer to whatever question is being asked by that individual in that exact moment in time. And I think it started with healthcare and any money related, because those are the ones where the stakes are the highest. If someone is given the wrong advice or the wrong information, then potentially that can be very harmful, both in terms of health and in terms of finances. But I think once they've kind of got that nailed, then it's probable that they're going to move into other areas. And the reason for that is, again, going back to the reason or the ultimate mission of Google, which is to provide the best to provide the best and most relevant answers. So I think that it will apply with everything. This is just where they've started.
It makes a lot of sense. Obviously, at the moment, we're talking about on-site content, so blogs or knowledge base pieces as well. But I suppose if we're talking about the other side of SEO, which is picking up good quality inbound links, that's going to be much easier as well with access to the sort of expertise that companies like Kolabtree offer. I know that when we're doing outreach to different publications, if we can pitch a publication on something that's been written by a genuine authority, they're much more likely to take that on. And if we say, yeah, it's been written by Tony and he knows a bit about, or he's done some research on it, it's much less credible, isn't it? So is that something that you see popular? Is that a popular use case on Kolabtree, using these sorts of experts for outbound and link acquisition?
It is definitely, and in all sorts of different sized companies. So even in relatively small companies where the CEO themselves is extremely passionate about a particular subject area, because they're busy running their business, they don't necessarily have that much time to write content. But they do recognize that it's an important part of their growth strategy to write content, because people need to understand, or they as a business want people to understand that they are the experts in what they do. So we do see examples, not just in healthcare, but in all sorts of areas where organizations are looking for an expert in a particular area that's able to write in a various, in a variety of different styles to suit a variety of audiences, so that those guest posts essentially can go out onto other websites, which will then link back to them, and there's a kind of dual benefit in that. Obviously, there is the benefit of those inbound links from what hopefully are authoritative and high domain websites, but also you're putting content in front of your target market, which is actually the number one reason you're doing this, because you want the people who have a particular problem and where you are the best qualified person to solve that problem, to know about you, to know who you are, to read your content, and to be convinced that you are actually the right person to help them.
Which moves us nicely onto the topic of credibility. I guess it's easy to think with a topic like this that it's easy to look at everything from a bit of an SEO perspective, isn't it? And just think about what can we say to rank and what can we say to get links. Whereas what we're actually talking about is increasing the credibility of your business, which is, that's all Google is trying to measure anyway. It's interesting when we're building a website, if we're building a site for a business which is scientific or they have deep expertise in one particular area, they'll often be very, very keen, obviously, to make sure that the content on the site has been well written and well researched. And yet simultaneously, like you said, they're all so busy, they're never able to give us the content. So it ends up being this kind of awkward balancing act where we're trying to interview people at the company and then write that up and then get it approved. I'm guessing that that's something that you see becoming a lot easier with sites like Kolabtree, allowing us to just tap into experts as an agency in that sort of situation, rather than having to draw bandwidth from the client themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think one of the advantages of platforms like Kolabtree and Upwork as well. We're a very similar business. The only difference is that we're very much focused in the scientific space. But the advantage is you can actually collaborate with a number of different potential freelancers before you actually select one. So a lot of organizations have various writing styles. So sometimes they want it to be deeply scientific and perhaps a bit dry, but very factual. And others want something that's actually more engaging and entertaining. And I think that's kind of one of the benefits. You can get the kind of style that you want.
One of the things that we do to pick up links is put together a real thought leadership piece in a space. And, the goal is to write the ultimate guide to whatever, or some kind of, leading piece, whether it's from a survey that we've conducted or something like that. Perhaps you could talk about how experts can be used to work on that type of project. Because if you're listening and you're worrying about, or you're thinking about how do we pick up loads of links in one go, this can often be a nice way of doing that. But you're not going to find one expert that's going to be able to write the whole thing, presumably. So it's going to have to be quite collaborative.
Yeah, that's right. So a lot of the time with this kind of exercise, it's great to have some first-hand data, and that could be data which is from a survey, because we are talking about academics. A lot of the time they'll be very experienced with surveys, and there is actually very much a science to writing a good survey where you can ask the right probing questions and get the right answer. So sometimes we'll have clients who will hire someone just for that, and then they may hire one or two other people to then address various aspects of the output of those results. And also, as part of that, it makes sense to look at any existing data or any existing research that's been done before. So that way, when you're producing your white paper, it's not just a standalone piece. It's actually you're bringing up to date all of the work or all of the studies or research that have been done in the past. And it's a little bit like skyscraper content, I guess. It's the way that you're taking everything that's been done before you're creating the ultimate latest version of it. And the benefit of that, of course, is that you become the go-to source, and it helps you with that credibility that we were talking about.
So I'll ask you in a bit about how people actually do that, because that sounds like quite an intimidating thing, and what are the moving parts, and how do we work on the process there. But I noticed when I think I did the original marketing review on your site, and I noticed that there was a piece about product development, and we'll hire specialist developers to work freelance on a particular project if there's like a particular piece of coding or whatever. But does the rise of outsourcing to scientists mean that people will be able to develop products which they wouldn't previously have been able to? Because I know you've given other examples, but if I'm trying to build an Instagram business, for example, and I want to make one of those mud face peels that everyone's raving about at the moment, I guess I can now hire a scientist to actually help me with that formulation. I don't just have to go to China and buy the first thing that hits me, right? This is massive on all sorts of levels, even outside marketing.
Yeah, I mean, this goes right back to the reason that Kolabtree was founded as a business, actually, on the premise that there's a huge amount of knowledge and innovation happening in the world of science. The effectiveness in connecting that with commerce and actually taking ideas to market is not particularly efficient, and so that's kind of why the business was founded originally. To connect these scientists with organizations who are able to actually take products to market, or to commercialize those products, or to put them into a situation where they're actually serving the purpose for which that they were developed in the first place, effectively. So our CEO, Ashmita, she likes to call it the democratization of science. So trying to tap into the incredible intelligence that exists within this scientific community. And we have lots of examples of this happening right now, Tim, especially with what's been happening in recent times around machine learning and artificial intelligence. So we have a lot of experts in this area who really understand deep learning algorithms and this kind of thing. And this kind of knowledge and technology is what's powering some of the world's most fastest growing startups right now. So in the past, it would potentially have been relatively difficult for an entrepreneur to turn their idea into something real. But it's actually platforms like Kolabtree. The idea is that they actually make that very, very easy. And you can literally post your project on Kolabtree and be liaising with an expert in any particular field within 24 hours. And that doesn't cost anything. So it's only when you decide that you want to work with the individual, then Kolabtree takes a 20% platform fee. So it does mean that people can come onto our platform and they can liaise directly with experts and actually have open dialogue with them. And it's only when they're convinced that they can actually help them that they need to make any kind of commitment. So that's just an example of how we're trying to make it really, really accessible.
It's a really good point. I mean, previously, if you're a founder and you're not particularly technical, but you need help with something like machine learning, what would you have done? You would have had to go to meetups, presumably, and network with people, and then potentially bring that person on as a salaried employee or give them equity or something like that, which is all a bit scary if you've just met someone. Whereas with a site like Kolabtree, and obviously there are other sites out there, people like Upwork can give you a kind of broad range of development skills in a similar kind of thread, but you can just start working on that thing immediately, and there's a cost saving because once that job is done, you're not paying that person in equity for the rest of their lives. So yeah, I can certainly see the appeal.
That's right. And these guys as well, they absolutely love what they do. So a lot of the experts on our platform really love to get involved with real world ideas. That's what they thrive on. So there's a huge amount of passion amongst our freelancer base as well.
Cool. So someone's listening and they're thinking, this sounds great. I want to build out a project. I want to, whether it's like producing a content piece or working on product development or whatever. I've never done this before. It feels a bit intimidating. It's not like Upwork where you might be talking to someone who's, fairly basic and you don't feel that intimidated. Here we're talking to like real freaking scientists, so I don't want to look like an idiot. If you've got some tips on how people can create a job which is actually going to be really attractive to the sort of applicants they actually want to attract.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just about articulating the exact problem that you have. So we say, when you come to us, it's a good idea to have a brief. So some customers come to us with a fully formed brief. They know exactly what it is that they want, and normally the best way to articulate that is just to describe the problem that you're facing, and maybe some indication of what you think the right solution might be. And you don't even need at that point to decide what the person you're reaching out to is an expert in, because all of the projects are put onto our website, and our team will then identify who they think the right person is.
Right.
There's a number of other examples as well where we have clients come to us who don't have a fully formed idea of what they want. They know roughly what they want, but they're not really ready to put a brief together because they don't know what would go into that brief. And so we encourage them to do exactly the same thing, essentially, and come onto our website and post the projects on the website just by describing the challenge that they have. Because it's normally actually through speaking with some of the experts on the platform that you start to get an idea of exactly what your brief would look like. So you can actually use the experts on Kolabtree to help you form the brief. And it may be the same person that you ultimately award that project to, or it may be a different one. So I think the main point here I'm trying to make is, fantastic if you know exactly what you want and you've got a fully formed brief, but if you don't, it doesn't matter. It may be that it's only after speaking to an expert in the area you'll really understand whether, how feasible your idea is and whether it actually could be made into a fully formed brief and ultimately launched as a project.
I think that's really important to note, that you don't necessarily need to know what it's all going to look like, because it can feel quite intimidating, can't it? Even when, if we're posting for a developer and if the project manager who's posting that job doesn't really understand the intricacies of exactly what's required, you feel a bit worried about looking like an idiot. Whereas you're saying, as long as you know the shape of the problem, the experts themselves will help you figure out, and they're not going to judge you.
Absolutely not. No. At the end of the day, you need a problem solved, and you don't know who the right person to speak to is. And there's lots of enthusiastic people on the platform who are ready to help answer that question before you have to make any commitment. So actually, the risk is quite low.
So what about tips for the working relationship? What sort of expectations should people have working with scientists like these?
So the platform has been built in a way to try and facilitate that as much as possible. So all of the kind of dialogue can be managed in the platform. In terms of things like project cost, so that's always one of the biggest questions people ask. This idea, I need some help with it. I've got no idea how much I should be charging or how much I should be paying for this particular project. Our platform works on a bidding system, so you can just put the projects live and you can give some sort of rough indication of budget, but ultimately it's bids that will come in from the freelancers that will give you the fairest indication of what the right price, what the right price to pay is. In terms of managing the project, so it's always useful to have milestones. And again, these are not things that you need to set up front. You can actually work out the milestones with the freelancer. So quite often they'll come back and they'll say, okay, I've looked at your project or your project scope. I think it should be broken down into 3 pieces, which we could call deliverables or milestones. I'll focus on milestone number 1 first, and the deliverable will be this, which I estimate will take roughly this much time and will cost this much money. And normally it will either be on an hourly basis or on a project basis. So that's really up to you. It's between the client and the freelancer to decide on that.
Budget's a scary one, isn't it? Because you can feel if someone, particularly on a bidding platform, if someone sets a bid which is too low, you can think, maybe they don't really know what they're doing or they're less experienced. But if someone sets a bid that's too high, that doesn't necessarily guarantee you of quality. And I know that when we've been looking for outside help to help us with various things, we've been burnt either way, thinking, we're getting a great deal, and that person actually doesn't know what they're talking about, or paying top whack thinking we're going to get top quality, and actually, it's just someone who's just taking a punt and seeing if anyone bites. So how do you police that, and how should businesses going onto the site to request jobs, how should they think about what sort of budget they need to be working at?
Yeah, so like I said, most of the freelancers on our platform are PhDs, or they have some kind of a specialist postgraduate qualification. Those that are PhDs will have written publications as part of their PhD, so that they'll have published papers. So if you need any reassurance that someone is an expert in a particular area, then you just look to see whether they've published papers in that area, whatever that area is. And so you can see those against people's profile on the Kolabtree website. What you'll quite often see is that you may get two people who are equally qualified, and one has got has put in quite a high price, and one has put quite a low price. I think it's partly by nature of the fact that our freelancers will bid on projects not just based on their expertise, but based on whether they're genuinely interesting and exciting for that individual. So it's difficult to know. There isn't always a direct correlation between price and ability or qualification. So my best advice would be to ask some probing questions, because you can do that. You can be in dialogue before we make any commitment. So you can ask them some questions. You can ask for any publications that they've done, which maybe aren't already on their profile, or examples of work that they've done in similar areas. And so you should be able to get to a point where actually you have a high level of confidence. And you can do a Skype call with them as well. So you can really make it down to them, put the onus on them to convince you that they are the right person.
Yeah, I love it. It's important to remember that price is only one of the criteria that you should use to decide something like this, isn't it? And I think with a Skype call, you're not going to get through a 20-minute Skype call with someone without getting a sense for how passionate they are about the project that you're working on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you'll normally get a lot of really useful information even during a call like that, because they'll be keen to demonstrate their knowledge and expertise in this area. So a call like that can be really, really valuable.
So Jonathan, do you have any examples of businesses that have used Kolabtree's body of scientists to get coverage, to get their business some attention?
Yeah, we do. We've got various examples. Probably one of the most memorable ones is we recently helped someone hire a mathematician to figure out how Ross could have got the sofa up the stairs in the Friends pivot scene. So which actually worked out very well. They got a lot of coverage in various newspapers and online mentions as well.
So that's quite interesting, because that's something that's comedy and throwaway, but it's a bit of an iconic thing, isn't it? We see this a lot with businesses picking up links. They'll say, how many people were at Donald Trump's rally or whatever, and then they'll get some scientist to work out the people per square meter, and then calculate that, and kind of having people deconstruct things that we just kind of take for granted seems to be a really good angle to get some attention from.
Yeah, I think it's really relatable. People it's fun, but it's also factual. I think it really appeals. I think it's something that journalists really like, because it's new information, and there is data there to support it, but it's also fun.
Yeah, perfect combination of your audience already knows it, but this is a new take on it. Love it.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, Jonathan, this is fascinating. I'm a massive believer in Kolabtree. I remember since I first reviewed the site, I was like, yes, we'd actually been looking for sites that offered this, and Kolabtree was one of the ones that we found during our search for more advanced content writers that we needed for more advanced projects. So big believer in where you're at, and I think you're exactly where the market will end up going. And obviously for some businesses, they're there already. So really exciting space to be in. Thank you so much for coming onto the show to talk about Kolabtree. Where do people go to find out a bit more about you and drop in a project?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tim. So we recommend you come visit our website. So it's www.kolabtree, that's KOLABTREE.com. And you'll find all the information about who we are and what we do. You can browse through our 10,000 freelancer profiles, and if you want to post your project, you can just hit the green button and fill in the short form. It only takes a couple of minutes, and most people start receiving bids within 24 hours. So like I said, if you have a fully formed idea, go for it. Even if your idea isn't quite fully formed yet, feel free to post a project on the website, and our team will try and help you, or you can connect with the freelancers who should be able to help you form your idea.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jonathan, and thank you everyone for tuning in.
Thanks, Tim.